Well, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you this evening to the Wolper Wellbeing program. My name's Julie McCrossin, and it's my great pleasure to be your host and MC this evening. And of course, the Wolper Wellbeing program is hosted by Wolper Jewish Hospital, Friends of Wolper, and this evening by the Top Blokes Foundation. And our topic tonight is bringing up boys and raising good men towards a healthier definition of masculinity. And it just gives me great pleasure also to acknowledge this evening that I'm broadcasting to you on the land of the Kaurna people, that's in the Adelaide region, and I'd like to acknowledge I'm on Aboriginal land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I know we have panel members joining us from the Sydney region and also from the Gold Coast in Queensland. And we have people joining us from various parts of Australia and, of course, a lot of people from Sydney. Just before we begin, some quick housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the Wolper Jewish Hospital website in a few days. And so it will get a larger audience through that hospital website, where you can indeed see the full series of webinars on a range of health topics going back 18 years plus, I think. And of course, we welcome your questions tonight, live questions. You can start putting them in now. Just go to the Q&A tab at the bottom and put your questions in. And we have a question moderator. We're welcoming back this evening with great warmth, Dr. Alan Schell, who will be monitoring your questions, and I will come to him regularly during the evening and he will tell us the trend of some of the questions and will answer as many of your questions as possible. Anonymous questions are welcome, and in fact, we will bring all the questions anonymously to you tonight. Look, ladies and gentlemen and everyone, just before I begin, I would like to say that the focus tonight is on positive strategies for supporting the boys in our lives to grow into happy and healthy young men who engage positively with their families, their friends, their partners, their school and their communities, and who can connect emotionally in a positive way with both male and female role models and mentors in a relationship of trust. And I think we're going to hear a lot about the importance of trust as well as role models and mentors. And I did want to say to you, the Wolper Wellbeing program scheduled this particular boys' health topic months ago, long before the distressing media reports about the behaviour of some boys in Sydney schools. Some of you will be familiar with, where very disturbing attitudes have been exhibited towards girls and women and homosexuals, things that anti-Semitism and much more. But this program on boys' health was planned before those events. Well, welcome again, and it's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Alan Schell to open proceedings. Alan has worked for many years as a general practitioner, a founder and a long-term supporter of the Wolper Wellbeing program. This is deaf sign clapping, and I welcome you, Alan. Lovely to see you.
Thank you very much, Julie, and thank you all for being here this evening. I'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal clan, the Eora Nation, which is part of the land where Wolper is situated. Many of you tonight may be new to these programs. We've been running them for over 18 years. And part of that is the knowledge that people like to be updated on current issues in medicine, and that's what the Wellbeing program is about. Wolper Hospital itself is a first-class institution in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, has been here, as you see behind me, more than 60 years, and is a highly regarded rehabilitation, palliative care and general medicine facility in the eastern suburbs. I think that it's very important that you are here tonight. We'd like to hear your questions. And before we do that, I'll introduce one of our special guests here, Melissa Abu Ghzala from Top Blokes Foundation, to just let us know a bit about that, and then she'll be part of the Q&A. So I'll just hand over to Melissa and I'll quietly turn my video off. Thank you.
Hi all, it is so great to be here. We are so pleased to be supporting this incredible and very, very important discussion that we'll be having tonight. So the Top Blokes Foundation, we are an organisation that is passionate about helping young males lead healthy and safe lives. And I think by you registering to tonight's event, you know how critical it is that we support young men to lead healthy and safe lives, and to also support their friends as they go through their journey from adolescence into adulthood as well. A little bit about our organisation. We deliver preventative and early intervention programs for young males as young as 10 years old all the way to 24 years old. And we do this through what we call structured group peer mentoring. So often schools will come to us and share that they've got groups of young men that might need more support for a range of factors, whether they need more access to more positive male role models, they might have been going through a lot at home, a complex home life, or they might start to be exposed or start to experiment with drugs and alcohol in relationships. And we engage qualified youth workers who come and deliver weekly mentoring programs for either 3 months or 6 months, helping young men have the right tools, skills, and have, most importantly, safe conversations around the social issues we know that they're going to potentially come across or struggle with as they continue on into adolescence as well. At this stage, we have over 2,500 young men go through our weekly mentoring programs, which we're really proud about, but the list is growing and we have a significant wait list of schools and parents who contact us, which just shows how important it is to be having these conversations and arming ourselves with as many strategies to support the young men in our lives as well. So we would love to connect with you all afterwards. If there's any way that our organisation can help, please do get in touch. Obviously, we're on Facebook and Instagram and websites and all of that as well. But we are incredibly proud to be partnering tonight and supporting what is such an important conversation.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was just wonderful to hear you, and thank you for kicking it off. And if you've just joined us, welcome to our webinar tonight about raising boys and raising boys to be good men. And we welcome your questions. You'll see the Q&A bottom at the bottom. Please put your questions in. And our question monitor, Dr. Alan Schell, an experienced general practitioner, who'll be reviewing them, and I'll come to him regularly during our evening discussions to get your questions. Look, ladies and gentlemen, just before I introduce our panel and we get going, we have a number of poll questions to do on screen on your computers, and it's just an opportunity to learn a little bit about you, and it helps our panel members to communicate with you as effectively as possible. So I'm going to be asking Michael, our mystery media man behind the scenes, to put up 5 different questions. I'll read the question, give you a few moments to answer it. I'll then read the answer and we'll go on to the next one. So Michael, could you put up our first poll question, please? And you can see it's called number 1, are you, and we just want you to make one choice, a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, a mentor, a teenage boy or a teenage girl? Please answer. And thank you, Michael, if we could see the response. So 54% of our audience so far are parents, 36% grandparents, 4% teachers, 6% mentors. And we don't have teenagers with us tonight. Our second question, please. This is a question about masculinity. Which of the following words do you associate with masculinity? And you can mark as many as you want. Start marking, please. I've tried to give you a little bit more time. Let's see our answers so far. Thank you, Michael. So 37% sensitive, 37%, muscular, 60%, gentle, 39%, macho, 54%, vulnerable, 34%, dominant, 45%, stoic, 48%, self-reliant, I think it was 67%. Very, very interesting. Question 3, please. Do you think boys feel pressure to mark as many as you want? Be emotionally strong, be interested in sports, be willing to throw a punch if provoked, join in when other boys talk about women's attractiveness, present as heterosexual, none of the above. Thank you, Michael. So be emotionally strong. 86% think boys do feel pressure to do this. 89% agree that there is pressure to be interested in sports. 50% pressure to be willing to throw a punch if provoked. 70% to join in when boys talk about women's attractiveness. 70% present as heterosexual, and 2% none of the above. Very interesting, 50% on the provoke, the punch. Our next one, please. We have 2 more to go. Have you ever seen your father cry? Yes, once, no, single choice. And the answer, please. 55% yes, 11% once, 34% no. Thank you. And our final question. Which of the following concerns, and you can mark as many as you want, do you feel in relation to raising boys? Drugs, alcohol, cyberbullying, physical bullying, social media use, attitude to girls, sexting, partying, racism and anti-Semitism. I'll give you a little longer to answer this. Thank you, Michael. Concerns, 77% drugs, 81% alcohol, 77% cyberbullying, 77% physical bullying, 82% social media use, 65% attitude to girls, 61% sexting, 49% partying. Look, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you found them interesting, and obviously we're hoping our panel did as well. Let me welcome our panel now. If I could welcome Dr. Zac Seidler, Dr. Neil Hall, Melissa Abu Ghzala, and also Zaylin Cecil. If you could all turn on your cameras, please. And this is, as you know, deaf sign clapping. Do you want to clap and just welcome each other? We really graciously thank you for giving us your precious time tonight. Our goal, ladies and gentlemen, in this discussion is really to get lots of constructive and positive ideas about how to raise boys to be good men, as well as discussing, of course, what being a good man means and how it may have changed over the years and what particular challenges young men may face today. And of course, we will also speak about the reduction of the concerning rate of suicide among young men in this country. That will be fundamentally there because there is a mental health dimension to what we're discussing tonight, bringing up boys, raising good men towards a healthier definition of masculinity. What I'd like to do is introduce each of our guests more fully as I bring them in. So let me begin with Dr. Zac Seidler. If you could wave, Zac, so people know who you are. And Zac is a clinical psychologist, a researcher, and he's considered a national expert in men's mental health. He's the director of mental health with Movember, and a senior research fellow with Orygen at the University of Melbourne. Welcome, Zac. Can you just give us an explanation of what Movember and Orygen are? Because really they are resources, aren't they, for our audience tonight to some degree?
For sure. Thanks, Julie, and lovely to be here alongside many of my friends as well. And I see many friends of the community in the audience as well. So hello to everyone. So Movember is well known as the moustache factory, as we call it. we became well known as growing a moustache in the month of November, and that started in 2003, and we are now the largest global men's health charity in the world. So we're all over, and we focus on early intervention and prevention when it comes to men's health. So that's mental health, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and really focusing on masculinity on the whole. And then Orygen is at the University of Melbourne, is headed up by Pat McGorry, who was Australian of the Year a few years ago, and is the Centre for Youth Excellence in Mental Health. So we focus on young people, young men in my case, and ensuring that they live happy, healthier, longer lives.
Look, thanks a lot, Zach. There's a couple of things I want to get on the table right at the beginning with you, if I may. And even though we've just gone through a list of concerns, and I hope that's helped inform you of what's on the minds of our audience tonight, I think one of the key messages you want to get across is the importance of a strength-based approach to thinking about boys and young men. And if I may, I'd just like to read one line, a couple of lines from an article you've written. It has become customary for researchers and clinicians to target pathology and what is wrong with men in order to address these issues, rather than to emphasize the positive aspects of being a man in order to advance male-centered healthcare. Explain to me what that's all about. What's your key message to our audience tonight?
Who wrote that? That's a good quote. I think that me in another life, the important part of this narrative, and the thing that I'm sure Melissa and Neil and Zalin are going to bring up throughout the evening, is that there's a lot of talk of what men cannot do, of what men should not do. There is an increasingly rigid and constrained spectrum of behavior and emotions through which men live their lives. And my attempt is to open that back up again. We've seen such progress in the way that girls and women are now being embraced within society, workplaces, etc. We have a lot of work left to do there. But equally, I think we are seeing a closing down of options for how men can go about expressing and experiencing, their emotional lives, etc. And so when I talk about strength-based approaches to men, it means really leveraging their strengths to our advantage. And so I'm sure we'll talk about young men later on. And in my clinical work, the perfect example of this is a young guy who does not care less about being there. He does not want to talk to me. He's made that abundantly clear through muttering for an hour. And then we get to the point where I put aside my glasses and talk to him, man to man, not in a role modeling sense necessarily, but really getting to the core of what his interests are. What does he like doing? What does he enjoy? And gaming, which just came up there, which is often seen as a negative behavior, has great community, has great opportunities for social connection. And so one of my clients this evening, I ended up playing a game with him online, and we were both, playing, and the amount of information that I received from him during those 5 minutes where he was busy with his hands and his mind doing something else, he unraveled in front of me. And we had the most, intense conversation that we'd had, whereas I've been seeing him for 3 months and hadn't gotten any breakthroughs. So do not bring your own biases, your own beliefs, and place them on these young people as if it's our way or the highway, because it's just not working. Rather, we should go, what works for you? What do you like? How do you go about engaging? And let's meet you in the middle.
Thank you. Can I come to something else, if I may? And that is this notion of masculinities, plural, right? Now, for some of us, that's a new way of thinking. And again, I'm going to read a quote to you, because as I understand it, I began, you do a bit of research when you're the MC of a discussion like this. And when you read a lot of current research by clinical psychologists, social workers like Neil, people who research men's health, people are talking about masculinity in the plural. And let me just read another quote from one of your interesting articles. I hope you can remember you saying it. And it really goes to this question where you're advocating, as I understand it, or asserting that there is a problem with expecting boys to conform to what is so-called traditional masculinity. Among men, high conformity to traditional masculine norms has been correlated with less help-seeking behaviour and more negative attitudes towards psychological treatments, and with men being repeatedly found to be half as likely to seek help for mental health concerns from a GP or a mental health professional compared to women. And you go on to say that this is true and consistent across countries, racial and ethnic groups, and across lifespan. So you seem to be saying it's a good thing to have varied views of what it means to be a man. Can you explain why that is good and give us some ideas of what you mean by varied ways to be masculine?
Definitely. So the idea there is that, as with anything, the key for a psychologist or social worker like Neil is to make sure that we are aiming for flexibility. Flexibility, whether it's yoga or otherwise, is beneficial for the way that we go about living our lives. And what has been brought into the common cultural vernacular is this idea of one masculinity. It is the notion of traditional masculinity, which implies that being stoic, self-reliant, strong, dominant, all of the things that you see in the likes of Superman and or Don Draper in Mad Men. Some of these, and they end up in some instances being very harmful traits when they are applied rigidly, are directly correlated, as that article spoke about, with less help seeking. They actually, self-reliance has a correlation with suicidality. So there is real risk here when you apply these things across contexts. So when I talk about multiple masculinities, I think that everyone in the audience can understand the idea that the men in their lives are not the same and do not represent or reflect the exact same form of masculinity all the time. It's just not true. We have public masculinity, we have private masculinity, we have moment to moment. I always say that I worked with a carpenter who he'd go to the pub and have a VB with his mates, and then he'd come home and watch a VB, he'd watch a Disney movie with his daughter and cry. It's like these things can coalesce, contradict, overlap. There is no reason that there should be one way of being here. And it's that idea that is fundamentally dangerous. And that's what I want parents, teachers, health practitioners to understand, is that if we go in with this assumption, they will conform to that idea, because men, whether it be boys or older men, are feeling the pressures to live up to these ideals. And what we end up with is this notion of precarious masculinity, which is that is very hard won and easily lost. So you get to this point where you're working tirelessly to try and be that Superman, but it's just unattainable. It's not a standard that we want to be striving for. And as a result, because all of us fail to get there, because perfection doesn't exist, and also because it's not really something we should be striving for, we end up with lots of these boys feeling like they've failed, and there's this success gap. And as a result, you get this backlash behavior, which is kind of what we're seeing in many instances, where people are trying to reassert their dominance or their power in any given situation.
I'm obviously going to come to the other guests and move around between you all tonight a lot, but I just want to follow up on one thing you said, Zach, before I move on, where you said there was a correlation, a connection between self-reliance and suicidality. Now, I know that suicide prevention is one of your great passions. Just quickly give us a sense of how serious an issue it is for boys and men in Australia, and then what that self-reliance thing, explain that, please.
Definitely. So for those who don't know, we lose 7 men a day on average to suicide across Australia. That amounts to over 2,000 guys a year, and across the globe, we are losing a man a minute to suicide. So that's something that Movember takes very seriously, and is much of the work that we do. And I know that everyone on this call would agree, and one way or another, the work that we do hopefully is going to be impacting, those statistics. When it comes to self-reliance, there's a lot of stuff that is going on here. Masculinity is directly intertwined with the way that mental health issues manifest in men, whereas you would often be looking for depression in its stereotypical form when you think of suicidality, whereby people are crying and being very down and, eating ice cream and not leaving the house, and all of these ideas, not sleeping, fatigued, losing weight, some of these typical symptoms. What we often see in men is an atypical form of distress, which is externalizing, which is to say violence, substance misuse, risk-taking, these types of behaviors which are considered either men behaving badly or boys being boys, are often cries for help. And if we miss those cues, that's where you end up with guys being self-reliant. They're going, everything's fine, I don't need anybody in my life. They disconnect, they socially isolate, and that's where risk factors go through the roof. And we really need to be jumping on those situations to help men reconnect, find a sense of belonging and community and connection, because that's really what saves lives.
Look, thank you. Dr. Zac Seidler has been talking to us, a clinical psychologist and a national leader in men's mental health, and we'll be coming back. I'd like to bring in now, if I may, Zaylin Cecil, and welcome back Melissa Abu Ghzala, both from the Top Blokes Foundation. Just quickly, Melissa, if you could turn on your mic and just tell us, in what states and territories do you offer the support to primary schools, high schools, and the community that you mentioned in your opening remarks?
Well, at this stage, we offer our programs across New South Wales, so sort of as south coast, all the way up to the Hunter and everywhere in between, and then also in Queensland, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Toowoomba, and growing that as well. We do also run an online mentoring program for young men who are 16 plus that anyone in Australia and internationally can access as well. But as Zac sort of mentioned, this issue is sort of widespread, and so the more support that young men can get, the safer they can be.
Look, thank you. If I could talk to both of you, I just want to bring Zaylin in. And Zaylin Cecil is one of the mentors with the Top Blokes Foundation, a very experienced youth worker. I think you're in your early 30s. You've got an 8-year-old son and possibly another son on the way, as I understand it. And so a big welcome to you, Zaylin, and thank you for giving us time from Queensland. I know from experience, and if you've just joined us, please pop any questions you have into the Q&A. But I know from experience with the Wolper Wellbeing forums that people love practical advice. And so I just want to hear a little bit about the work you do as a mentor. And Melissa, I'll get your thoughts on it as well. But you've got some top bloke values: respect, mateship, and upstander. Can you talk about what you're promoting with the young men in your life that you work with a lot in schools, I think? Tell us what you're doing in positive ways to try and nurture these boys.
I think, and again, hello to everybody. I'm pretty new to this kind of stuff, but I'll do my best. And so the work that we're doing in small groups, I think if we look at ancient times culturally, a lot of the progressions of people were actually done in, there was men's business and there was women's business. And the men supported the men as far as tribe and community went. Outside of the house, inside the home, obviously your spouse would be the main support network and your children. And we're kind of trying to deliver that back into a modernized system. So we get these group of boys into a close-knit system where they're safe, they can share. The number one foundation for the work that we do, everything that we are able to achieve is built upon a foundation which we call building rapport. Without being able to build a strong relationship with these young men, it's kind of delusional to think that they would open up and actually allow us access to their thoughts. More often than not, we kind of hear more of things that they've heard from other people as opposed to things that they actually truly believe in. So just repeating things that they've been told for the 15 years of their life. And I think when we're looking at mateship, that's the big factor that we're missing within a lot of the community work and society views, in that sense that they think that we need people from outside of manhood or masculinities to come in and show men how to be the right kind of masculine, which for me personally isn't the case. I've been able to build very strong rapports very quickly because I am a man and I'm quite masculine to the most part. But then when I openly share with them the different kind of masculine that I step into when I'm dealing with my son, and also when I'm being a husband, very different to when I'm actually playing footy on the football field or when I'm protecting my household. So letting these guys kind of learn that there's different forms of masculine within masculinities, and that you're going to wear those different hats in different situations, and that that's okay, and that they get to decide those hats in those situations, and they can learn from those mistakes. I really liked what Dr. Zac said when it's because for us it's about accountability, right?
Just
and it's
before
about
you go
learning.
to accountability, Zalen, as I understand it, you feel that it's important that you can share with these young men you work with both your masculine and your feminine side, and help them to do so. And also, as you've indicated there, that they can choose their own authentic personal way to be a man rather than conforming to a particular style. How do you nurture that in young men?
Well, they already do it. It's just not acknowledged, and it's just not praised. Hey, it's something that cops quite a lot of judgment, because people often misunderstand that you can be dominant, strong, muscular, assertive, decisive, and then at the same time also be nurturing, kind, loving, patient. And so they're already doing this. It's just that they usually get the most attention when they're misusing their masculine, because they haven't been taught the proper tools or strategies to self-regulate. Hey, so their mind goes into, and this is just what we see in the field. With the hands-on work that we do. And when you actually give these boys the time to express themselves, and when they tell you the different behaviors they do within a 24-hour period, and then you start having conversations, you go, oh, so you shave your legs? And they're like, yeah. And well, that's not traditional masculinity. So why do you shave your legs if it's only acceptable to be traditionally masculine? And then they start sharing with you, well, it makes me feel good. And then we get to have those conversations that it's okay to do things that make you feel good.
I interrupted you about accountability, but could I hold accountability to the side and just hear about respect and upstander? Because you said they were the three top values. So respect and upstander, just tell us a little bit about that, please.
We think it's important at Top Blokes to teach these young men that it's okay to respect themselves, that it's a great attribute to respect others, and that it's even better to respect differences. And not everybody has to be the same. Not everybody has to be the same kind of masculine. Not everybody has to have the same hobbies, the same interests, the same beliefs. It's okay to be different. And there's a saying that I like to share with the boys where it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to be disagreeable. And when we actually unpack these situations with the boys, they buy into it completely, because they've been told for a long time, this is how you do it. If you don't, you'll receive this consequence, right? Hey, so it's okay to respect different attributes and different characteristics about yourself. And when it comes to being an upstander, being an upstander is standing up for what's right, standing up for those people who may not possess the confidence or the courage to share their voice openly, and to make sure that everybody around you and within your community is safe. Hey, so upstander behavior is just the complete opposite of being a bystander. Hey, which the bystander effect is obviously if nobody else is doing anything to challenge the wrong behaviors that are taking place, then it's also not my responsibility to challenge it. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to watch this play out. And only if other people get involved, then maybe I'll think about it. But if no one gets involved, I'm going to be a part of the pack and just let this unravel before my eyes type of situation. Whereas we always advocate for our boys to be upstanders, to do it safely, and to make sure that they're looking out for themselves, their community, their friends, their family, and just thinking about what's right.
I need to go to questions shortly, and I will bring you in, Neil, of course, shortly as well. But Melissa, why are you smiling? You're looking so approvingly at this at Zalen as your mentor. What is he saying that's embodying for you your vision of your Top Blokes Foundation, your organisation?
Oh, and I was going to say, my background is being a youth worker, and I remember quite a few years ago when the team said, Mel, look, I think it's time, you retire from that. You're just not as cool anymore. You can see with someone like Zalen just how easy it is to watch him, do his thing, and why young men build that rapport with him so quickly. And I think for me, the vision of the organisation is about helping young men be healthy and safe, and doing this through challenging and nurturing them to be their best selves. And as Zalen said, it's about creating that environment where young men feel like they have the permission to be their authentic selves and to live a life that is purposeful and that is real for them as well. And the more that we can help, kind of like a term of what we use to help young men live outside of the man box, so feel like they've got the freedoms to be themselves, the more that we're going to see better health outcomes as well. And we're seeing that on such a regular basis. And particularly in our masculinities workshop, young men often come into the workshop having these, as mentioned, these traditional ideas of how a man should behave, but they're leaving the workshop very easily saying that, well, to be masculine, you just have to be yourself, and to have the confidence to be yourself as well. And that's what we, as supporters of young men and in young men's lives, that's what we have to ensure, is that we're creating that safe space and also helping to give young men diversity of thought. And as Aileen said, to give examples, to show different ways of behaving, to show different case studies, so that they've got examples around them and not just relying on what they see with their peers.
Look, thank you. I'm going to introduce Neil to our audience before I go to questions. So let me introduce now Dr. Neil Hall, who's the Director of the Academic Program in Social Work at Western Sydney University, and also the lead academic in the Centre for Male Health. And a big welcome to you, Neil. And I've seen you nodding like mad at various things, but let me introduce one of the ideas that I know is really close to your heart, and that is the really important, the great importance of male role models. And I think Melissa talks about establishing an ecosystem, a positive ecosystem of men for young men. But you think male role models and mentors are critical, but particularly across generations. Tell us about that, because people are watching this tonight because they want to help the boys and the men in their life. What's this cross-generational issue?
Welcome, friends from Darug Country in Western Sydney. Do I get that question because I'm older than everyone else, Julie? Or
no, it's because in your work you emphasise its importance.
No, thank you. No, I have had the privilege of working with men and boys for something like 36 years now, both as a social worker and as a researcher. But I think one of the things that I've found across all those years and across the different types of projects and research that I've been engaged in is how important it is for young men to be able to connect with men of the next generation up, or the previous generation, I suppose it is. But and I think there are things that are equally important for middle-aged men and older men in engaging with younger men as well. So yeah, there's lots of things that we can learn from each other in that process and in that connection.
Give me an example in your own life of something that you feel you've learned from men of different generations that it helps you to be a happy, healthy person.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can go right back to being a teenager and identify a youth worker that helped me get through a really rough patch in my own life. You know, he was probably maybe 10 years older than me. But his calmness and his ability to help me see the bigger picture as a angst-ridden 15-year-old, you know, that was really, really important. And I could see that how he had made some of those decisions for himself to get through. So shout out to Colin. He's probably not watching, but I'll always give him homage when I can.
You can send him the recording when it's
as a I guess for myself, you know, I've had sports coaches that have been significant. My own father was significant in a number of ways as well, although, you know, he was caught up in the stereotypes of his generation. But God rest his soul. But more recently, sort of, I've looked to my elders that are also researching in the field that I am, and to learn from them about how to engage respectfully with people as a researcher, but also how to continue to be gentle with people and affirming people's strengths, like Zach was talking about. You know, too often we get men and boys saying to us, well, you know, I finally screwed up the courage to go and seek help from somebody. And I walked through the door of the agency, and they look at me like I'm a sinner. They look at me like why didn't I come ages ago? They look at me like I'm to blame for all that's going wrong with me. And look, I don't know about you, but if that was me, I'd just turn around and walk out again. You know, those kinds of things. This is why I think, you know, we can learn from each other about not just about understanding the issues, but how to respond appropriately and non-judgmentally.
And Neil, I know this notion of men-friendly services is critical. Can you all, and you're nodding there, Zach, can you both help me to return to that? Because I need to go to give the audience a go, but let's come back to this notion of men-friendly services, as well as what parents, grandparents, uncles, family members can do. We'll focus on that positive. But let me welcome back Dr. Alan Schell, our GP question moderator, and hear what people have been asking and hear some questions. Welcome, Alan. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Neil, I think I'm the older one here. A grandparent, a parent, and thank you all for your words of wisdom. We've had haven't really had too many online questions, but we had quite a few before people did mail them in. And I think one that's quite relevant from what all you're saying is, as a solo mum without any direct family male members around, I'm interested in seeing how we can promote positive masculinity, particularly to my 12-year-old. And I think when you talk about maleness and male members, what do we do? And there will be quite a few solo mums for lots of reasons out there. I think that's a very good question.
I think that's a great one. Stay with us, Alan, because I want to do a few. Zac Seidler, would you come in there? The single parent and
Sure.
And the single mum and getting this ecosystem of male role models and mentors.
I think that, and I agree with Zaylin in the idea of having, male spaces and places is very important. But the role of mothers in young boys' lives cannot be underestimated. And the amount of single mothers, who are the parents of clients that I see who do an incredible job at balancing what is a terribly difficult situation in many instances, is awe-inspiring in many ways. I think that there are ways of talking about and expressing and explaining the role of masculinity, even if you are not a man, and I think that, or identifying as a man, and I think that that's very important. In the clinical work that I do, everyone believes that men only want to see male clinicians, and that is not the case. They want choice. They definitely want choice. We should have more male clinicians. There's no doubt about that. But 60% of, we surveyed 2,000 guys, 60% of them had no preference. They just want someone who cares, who listens, who understands. And there is no suggestion that women cannot play that role. And so across the board, I think it comes down to making sure that we are not, as I said, forcing our own beliefs, biases, attitudes, stereotypes on these young boys, but rather being expansive, strength-based, and flexible in our approach. And when it comes to this idea of male-sensitive services, schools, whatever it may be, that is the idea that we should be meeting men where they're at. We shouldn't be forcing them into a box. If you go to the vast majority of psychology clinics in Sydney, you are going to see women's health, women's weekly, on the table in the waiting room. You are going to see purple and pink websites that women themselves hate. So I'm not sure why anyone's doing that, full stop. We don't need bro-y blue ideas either. We just need something that is inclusive, something that tells men, as Neil said, when they come in the door, you are welcome here, you're in the right place at the right time, and we're willing to help.
Zach, I just want to press you a little bit there, though, because I feel in what I've heard so far this evening and in reading some of your material, ladies and gentlemen, before tonight, there is an emphasis on giving boys the opportunity to develop trusting relationships with other men of different ages as role models and mentors. And so I do think, as this question has put forward, that as a single mum, you think, well, how can I do that safely? And let's be honest, in a world where we've had an alarming amount of publicity about unfortunately, pedophilic behaviour. Not obviously, it's a tiny minority, don't get me wrong, but you know what I mean. I think single mums can feel a bit nervy about that. So
For sure.
I mean, is it sport? I'm going to come to Neil in a moment because I know he's researched sport and civic engagement. But what is your advice to single mums tonight of saying, how do I build these help my son to have these relationships?
I think it's really important that the boys are going to start seeking some of this stuff out themselves. So it's being attuned to it. They will gravitate towards a certain male teacher, for instance, or there may be an uncle or grandfather. And so it's providing the opportunities and the scaffolding for them to embrace and encourage and strengthen that relationship. You know, a music teacher, for instance, and really trying to understand what it is that they like about that, what it is that they are seeking, and, you know, making clear, especially if you're a single mother, that this person is not there to replace a father figure, but rather to diversify their relationships and their connections and help them see other ways of being. That's what it's all about. There are plenty of men who don't have any female role models, and I think that's equally problematic. So there is just this idea of opening up and allowing as many of these different relationships to blossom in ways. And yeah, you should be attuned to the fact, obviously, that there are men out there who may not have the best intentions. So understanding, you know, if you're a single mother, you probably have some male friends, and understanding, asking them, or going to top blokes to start with, around whether or not they are willing to have a role in their lives, and bringing these men in and having them around for dinner and showing, you know, beautiful, multiple, contradictory masculinities on display.
Thank you. Neil, let me bring you in there. What's your advice to single parent mums who might be watching this about how to get this ecosystem of good men around their boys?
Yeah, look, it is a scary time, and I'm actually really glad the questions come up, because I'd actually like to offer a little bit of comfort and reassurance to single mums. Out of some of the research I've just done recently, actually it's ongoing research with 16-year-old boys, we asked who would they most likely go to when they have a problem, and over 2/3 said they would go to their mum, not their dad. And so in terms of being available for boys when they're going through struggles, mums, you are the first point of call.
And was dad next?
Dad was next.
Yeah.
Slightly contrary to what Zach said, teachers were way, way, way down the list. They were more likely to go to an extended family member or a sports coach.
And just tell us in a nutshell the thrust of sport.
In a nutshell.
I know it's hard, this is the life of the media, but what's the constructive recommendation in relation to sport? And of course, there will be boys, presumably, who don't want to play it, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Sport works really well for those boys that are interested in sport. I'd say that in a nutshell. It works on a number of levels. It works in terms of being part of a team, learning to communicate, learning conflict resolution in a safe and fun environment. You get to learn new skills. Most of the boys, well, the research tells us that most boys go into sport because they want to do something with their mates. Very, very low down is winning. And so grassroots sports, particularly team sports, have a big role to play in enabling that kind of growth and development, and you know, just fostering a healthier transition to adulthood for those kids that are into sport. For the kids that are not into sport, it's about finding what they are passionate about.
Yeah, drama, chess,
yeah,
debating. Beg your pardon?
Reading.
Yeah, reading. I guess I was looking for social connectedness.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
A way of making connections, but a way of helping them to, you know, to grow in their interactions and respectful relationships. You know, I used to do a lot of work with street kids, and we'd be standing on street corners at midnight talking to people, and it's like, you know, there's this fear among the general community about young males gathering in large groups at night. But you know what they learn from doing that? Let's leave aside the sort of community fear for a moment, because that is real. But what they learn from doing that, they learn social interaction. They learn ways of protecting themselves and protecting each other because they have to. You know, so there's environments everywhere that you can draw strength from.
I'd like to come to Zale, and then I'll come straight back to Alan for another question, but can I come to you on a slightly different angle, Zale? I'm a stepmom to a girl and a boy, and I spent a good 12 years of my life in the western suburbs of Sydney, driving each of them to community soccer. It was community soccer, not school-based. And one was on Saturday and one was on Sunday. And it was fantastic. And I saw the incredible role of men, volunteers in sport. But why I mention it is we had to dedicate ourselves as parents. And in this case, I won't go into the details of my life, but you had to dedicate yourself as parents to get children, to register them, to pay the fees, to get them to practice, to get them to the game. There was often a lot of driving. I ate a hell of a lot of sausages. And there are kids in our community who don't have parents, you know, let alone the money to have the car, the petrol and the registration, but they don't have the motivation or the capacity to support their kids. So, because I know, Zaylan, you're working sometimes with troubled kids. How can we, what's your comment there for women who perhaps are lacking the support, or families that are lacking the support to get their children into these social connected environments? What can we do for those kids?
I can give them an example of how to interact socially. Most people that live in Australia usually live next to somebody on their left, and there's also somebody usually living on their right. Hey, where in our culture today, the community aspect when it comes to tribe is slowly lost its effect, to the extent where people are actually asking these questions. And whereas there used to be a time in Western society where you would move into a new street and half the people on that street will come and introduce themselves to you, welcome you to their neighborhood, bring their children around, see if your children are a similar age, and see if they can build a connection. And I would say that if you don't have that social connection, you don't have a vehicle, and you don't have the means to take your kid or the resources to take your child to get that social interaction, that you hold a potluck dinner at your house or at a community venue, and you open that space up and you create that social environment where they can actually thrive and learn that interaction. Me and my wife, we do it whenever we move to a new space. One of the reasons is because we did, like, you know, I got a son coming in February, but then my son's 8, so he spent quite a bit of time all by himself. And so we jumped onto that. We introduced ourselves to our neighbors. We saw where the kids were, where they were the same age. And I'm a big guy. I'm over 125 kilos. But for my son's social interaction and growth, I'm okay to walk a 3-block period. You know, I'm okay to walk a block or two and see where the kids are playing. Walking down to the local park to see that age demographic down there, see who's playing sport. Get my son involved with that. And there's also, I think sometimes we do want the face-to-face interaction. We do want that. But sometimes, you know, starting them where their strengths are, and maybe they're not confident to go in and straight away do the face-to-face interaction. Maybe sitting down and playing a video game where you get to meet their online friends and build that social interaction. Use that as an example and go, hey, how about we step outside for a minute and see if we can have some of these conversations out in our community. Maybe introduce ourselves to people that are eating at the local restaurant. Maybe introduce ourselves to the people that are lining up behind the ice cream man, to a scoop of cone. Maybe drop a joke or two and see if we can build some of these connections and see if we can utilize that. I think sometimes as parents, we get used to sitting back and expecting our children to do what we're not doing. And I think that it's imperative that we continue to be accountable and to show them these examples of how you actually, 1, make friends, 2, build connections, and then introduce yourself to your community. To single mothers out there, that would be kind of my advice. Just from my own experience, being a single dad for a time when I went through a bit of a rocky period with my partner, with my wife, and her doing the same thing. That's something that we ended up doing. When I moved into a new street, I saw where the kids were his own age. I went and introduced myself to those children's parents first, because obviously we would all agree it would be creepy if I didn't do that. So I went and did that to make sure that it was okay. They knew who I was. They knew where I lived. They know the work that I do. They've seen me in the community. And then they were okay with allowing my son to take part in their activities because they had more children. They knew he was alone. And we built great connection and great relationships by doing that.
Thank you. Very strong role for parents is the message I'm getting there. Alan, can we have another question, please?
Yes, I think before I do that, there was one very good comment in the Q&A where maybe we shouldn't, and Zaylan actually mentioned the feminine side, because about 35, 36% of people said gentle, vulnerable and sensitive, compared to 60 to 70% for self-reliant and muscular. So maybe we shouldn't be using feminine side. I'd like to know, I used to be a snag, a sensitive new age guy, and don't use that expression anymore. But that's what we are. We should be sensitive new age guys. We should be today's age, not yesterday's. So thank you for that. I think the other one, again, Zach brought up the issue of gaming with his client, his boy, and he opened up. However, people are asking, what are some of the recommendations around social media impact, possible influence, the impact of games and social media?
Zach, can I come to you on this? You know, this is an area of enormous concern. There are some famous influencers, I can't remember the name, but one guy recommends gross ways to treat women, and he literally has, I think, billions of views. So help us with this. What's our advice to our audience?
For sure. So that guy is Andrew Tate, and he is a piece of work, and hopefully he is now done for. But he will be one of many. That is the way that this works. That's the way the algorithms work. One goes, the other pops up. What we need to be doing, and this is something that Movember is very intent on, is creating new content that is equally as as consumable and as enticing for young guys, because really they're looking for the drama. And these guys lean into the drama. They just happen to do it with a misogynistic, homophobic, anti-Semitic lens, which is very strange to me. That's because these young guys, when I speak to them in clinic, they have no idea what they're viewing. They have they don't align themselves with lots of this stuff, especially when they're, the likes of a 12, 13-year-old. But by the time they become 15 and 16, they really have soaked that up, and it is very worrying to watch how it washes over them and becomes a value base in some ways. And that is because, as I said at the start, there is a lot of talk about what men should not be, what men should not do, and what these men are doing, whether it be Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, it doesn't matter. They are creating a very clear doctrine for young men about how to go about their lives. They are, Jordan Peterson, who's a very famous psychologist who is largely a men's rights activist in many ways. He has outlined, his book was called 12 Rules for Life. And the amount of young men who pick it up and they go, "Oh, you're telling me what to do. This is great. Everything's so complex at the moment. You tell me to be vulnerable. You tell me not to be vulnerable. I don't understand what's happening." He lays it down and he goes, "This is how to do it." Sadly, once again, that comes with dominance over women. It comes with, bullying in the workplace, all of these problematic ideals. So what we want to do...
Can I just say, Zach,
sure.
the people, the parents and grandparents, uncles viewing tonight, or families viewing tonight, they're obviously not going to be generating their own content.
For sure.
So I'm not criticizing what you've said.
No.
Just thinking
how to go about mitigating this. Yes.
Well, I guess, and stay... a mother I know that I admire said the single most important thing with my children, a boy and a girl, is to keep talking. Jewel, if we can just keep talking, I don't always like what I hear, but I want to keep talking.
Definitely.
Are there practical tips like that?
That's the key. Something that I always say, when it comes to political correctness, for instance, if I'm working with a 15-year-old boy and he says something sexist in our first session, if I police his behavior from the outset, I lose him. And that's what it takes, when it comes to parenting and grandparents, you want, and Zaylan was just talking about the idea of rapport and how important trust is. So we need to build up those connections, and that comes through talking and interest. I want to know what you're watching and having no judgment about what they are watching. And so allowing that space for them to express what they're watching, and then over time, filtering in your beliefs and ideas around some of this stuff and finding the space, and this is where we need to be sharing as adults, and this never happens. We do, let's put all the attention on you, tell us what you're doing, what are you reading, what are you watching, and somehow we're immune to that question. So whenever I talk about mental health, for instance, I say to fathers, I go, you can't say, oh, I had some issues back in the day, but I got over them, so now you tell me about your issues. We are constantly in a roller coaster of mental health issues as adults. We should be expressing this stuff to boys regularly about the difficulties that we're going through, the content that we're watching, what interests us. I don't understand this power hierarchy that exists between, you know, whether it be young boys and their parents or otherwise. We need to have a flattening of that hierarchy where everyone can describe and discuss their interests. And therefore you're going to get, because these young guys are just waiting for their dad to tell them, this is what I'm into, you should come and join and watch it with them. Yeah. And you'll change the game. They'll go to school and then all the boys will be watching it.
Let me bring in Melissa. Melissa, I haven't been favouring the blokes. It's because it's the topic, but I know that you're empathic to that. But you're a strong believer in encouraging fathers and mothers to tell the stories of their own life and to feed, this is quoting you, feed boys with positive messages about masculinity, not just reinforcing traditional masculinity. Can you explain that and link it to this issue of how we help young men negotiate what they're getting hit with online?
Absolutely. You know, quite a few years back, pre-COVID days, we did some research with the Behavioural Insights team, and we really wanted to explore the idea of what would it take for boys to want to open up to their parents and to enter a dialogue with their parents about all of these issues, whether it's the online, the relationships, the masculinities, the drugs and alcohol, all the issues that we know young men face. What would it take for them to want to go to their parent as the first port of call versus the internet or their peers who might have the same information as what they get from the internet? And what was really interesting of what came out from the series of research and consultation was that young men want to hear the stories of their parents. They want to hear the mistakes that their parents have made when they were the same age, the lessons that they've learned, the vulnerabilities that they had trying to navigate similar social issues that they faced. And as Zach said, they want it to be done in a way where the dialogue is mutually respectful. And so they're treated as an adult. They're having an adult conversation. It's not this top-down approach of sharing and giving across what their judgments or their biases are, but entering an adult-like conversation with these 14 and 15-year-old young men. And if parents can master that and master making uncomfortable conversations comfortable, that's when young men are going to feel safe to come and to discuss a lot of these issues. And I'll give you an example. Part of our program, we invite young men to select a trusted adult who will join them on the Top Blokes journey. And that trusted adult will receive an SMS from Top Blokes to say, you know, today your young man learned about this topic, and we encourage them to have a conversation about it. And we had one young man who said, look, my dad is not getting these SMSs because he's not sitting me down and having a conversation with me. So we thought, oh, maybe it's a tech issue. So we rang the dad to see, is he getting the SMSs? And he said, I am, but I'm just trying to normalize these conversations. And that week, the SMS that he received was around talking to his son about sexual consent. And I think the next day on the news, the latest of one of the NRL sex scandals came out. And so the dad introduced or had a conversation with his son for 20 minutes about sexual consent, and the son didn't even know. That's how normal that conversation was. And that's what we need to try and build, is this safe space where parents can invite young men to share their perspectives, but also equally share the points of the mistakes that they've made, the vulnerabilities that they've had, the lessons they've learned, and relate that to the same experiences that their sons might be facing as well.
Zaylin, let me bring you in, because as I understand it, you believe that in mutual accountability between young people and the parents, and that parents do have a role in setting limits. And I'm just wondering how that fits with keeping the connection by staying open, where a child may share with you they're seeing some things online that you feel very uncomfortable with. And I know your son, I think, is about 8, but that one of the things you've grappled with as a youth worker is things that boys used to be talking about at 14 and 15 are turning up a lot earlier. So you must be thinking, what's my boy going to be seeing at 9 and 10? So how are you dealing with this as a father?
Well, I'm present in my son's life, Julie, so I'm actually not terrified at all. I plan on being very present, and I plan on the accountability starting with me. I don't plan on giving my son free range to be influenced by things that I can't actually screen, and that I wouldn't actually view myself. Hey, so we actually have quite a good arrangement, and that arrangement won't change just because he gets a bit older. I'm not going to expect him to behave or make positive choices that adults would make until he's actually an adult. I'm in no delusion of the maturity levels that my son's at. I don't think he's more mature than he actually is. I'm pretty sure his mind works typically like most 8-year-old minds work. Hey, so as he progresses through these age groups, the accountability obviously has to start with me. It can't begin with my son. He doesn't even know what that word means. Hey, so for me, it's about being a present parent. If I purchase him a phone, that phone is going to have the restrictions that I think is important to have on there. And if he finds a way to get around that, when I discover it, I'm not going to judge him for it. I'm going to have a conversation with him about why he felt the need to do that, and then share some of my own experiences. And because of the job that I do, I actually have quite a lot of information on how certain things can impact the young mind. So if we're talking about things like pornography, here at Top Blokes, we're stacked with information about pornography. I can tell him everything that he needs to know. I can tell him the risks that are involved in it. I can tell him potentially future outcomes. I can tell him what the big scary word letters for men are. ED, sorry, it took me a long time to say it. But those letters are kind of scary for most men. And we're talking about erectile dysfunction, and how easily obtainable it is now living in a hyper real system where pornography is at your fingertips 24/7, and doesn't get regulated almost at all. And we all know that our young people are having access to the internet, but as parents, are we putting in the same restrictions? This is how I kind of think about it, Julie. If we're not putting in at least the same restrictions that the school environment is placing in on computers, iPads, technological things that they're actually receiving from the school, as parents, I don't really think that the accountability has started with us. So for me, I'm just going to make sure that if I give my son an iPad, for example, there's going to be a parent lock system on that. I don't hide that from anyone. When anyone asks me about it, I'm completely open. They say, "Oh, so you don't trust your son?" And I'm like, well, no, it's the same reason why I don't let him cook eggs on the stove by himself. He's incapable of doing certain things and making certain decisions for himself because his brain function and maturity isn't there yet. And I'm not going to...
And I guess part of that too, and I can't remember which of it was that who said to me how important it is for mothers and fathers to communicate their values to their children.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, obviously, Zaylan, as children get older, they're going to see stuff elsewhere. But your son is going to know your values and your care and your regard. And I'm assuming, Zach, that's a protective factor, is it? The clear values. Can I just come to you, Neil, because I want to get another couple of questions from Alan, but I want to ask you about the Panthers NRL Building Young Men program, because I know you think it's an interesting program, and Panthers is a obviously they might even win, aren't they doing well? I can't remember.
They're on target, yeah.
But it's a great big palace on the river at Penrith that is an amazing world of rugby league. So what is it about that program you think is worth sharing?
Look, it's the Panthers Rugby League Club has a community section called Panthers on the Prowl, which is a little bit daunting as a title, but roll with me on this one. One of the things that they offer, and it's a mentoring program that is of a similar nature to what Top Blokes do, what another organisation called Conviction Group do with young males in Western Sydney. The unique nature, I think, of this program with Panthers called Building Young Men is that the mentoring is not necessarily one-to-one, but it's a sort of a dynamic group mentoring. And so there might be 8 to 10 16-year-old boys participating. There'll be 8 to 10 adults participating, and it's done in a group setting. And it's sort of creating a village. It's creating a village for that intergenerational communication, for people to learn from each other and to have some of those tough conversations about what's boy thinking versus what's man thinking. You know, what does it mean to respect people from different genders? And then there's practical stuff alongside that as well. Not, you know, how do I go about writing a CV? How do I start to make connections with people who are in the type of work I want to do? And then how can I get involved in helping or serving or giving back to my community? And the male mentors that are in the program are a range of people from industry, from community groups, from faith-based groups, as well as from the sporting world. So, you know, it's just, as I said, it's creating that village, that group mentoring kind of setting, which for most of the boys in the program don't have a father living in the home. And so it's, you know, getting a broader picture from lots of different men, as well as from their peers, about what it does mean to be male.
Fantastic. Look, I'll bring Alan back in. Let's see if we can do a couple more questions, because I'm really enjoying what's happening. Thanks, Alan.
Okay, two serious ones. How do we deal then with issues around espousing anti-racial or sexist issues, and how do you start that conversation, actually particularly as a grandparent? So you've got an opportunity to maybe help the person doesn't have a male around all the time, and there's a male grandparent. How does he sort of take on this, the opportunity to discuss these things, or how do you start that conversation? Is there a wonderful, easy way to get into the conversation with the young man, or is it something, as you say, Zach and Zaylen, you've got to build up a rapport, and then one day it's going to marvelously open up? I mean, that's a question.
I might come to Zach on this, and then we'll come to another question, just so we can get a few more questions. Yeah. Thanks, Zach.
I'm keen to hear Melissa's thoughts. There's no magic pill here at all. It takes time, effort. You know, the idea around the dinner table conversation, or the you know, he's not looking at me, he's not willing to engage with me, he's just muttering and stumbling his way through. There is always a time and a place. Do not force it. You need to wait for those opportunities, because they will come. But when it comes to talking about, you cannot force your way into those conversations. If anything, that pushes him further away. So I think telling stories is fundamental, especially if you're a grandparent. There seems to be, you know, I hang out with my grandparents all the time. They go, you know, many of them have been in the Wolper before. I've got 3 out of 4 still alive and over 93, kicking on. And my relationship with them is fundamentally, as I said, flat hierarchy. I give them shit, they give me shit, it's great. And there is an understanding of constant learning, intergenerational learning. And we have these discussions around what is meaningful to them, what are their values, and they've done that since day dot with me. And so there is a respect and a trust and an understanding of what is meaningful to them and why. And then it becomes an interhuman conversation where my ideas are valued. And as a result, it's more a discussion than it is a tutorial from them.
Yes. Now, can you see that wonderful modelling Zach has just done to involve Melissa? So I'm going to come to you, Melissa. And if you could go to this question of the racism element that was in that question as well. As you may be aware, there's been some media coverage about some anti-Semitic behaviour in Sydney schools recently, and obviously part of our audience this evening will be of a Jewish background, and immensely painful and distressing. How do you deal with racism in the Top Blokes Foundation?
Yeah, and look, what is really interesting is that when we ask young men who might show racist views or share racist attitudes in the program, when we ask them the question of who influenced that, by and large, it's often the parents, their parents, that out of all of the types of way that they can discriminate, racism is the one that is most influenced by their parents' view. And so I think, you know, we as parents really have a role to play, and sort of like I mentioned at the very beginning, to provide diversity of thinking and diversity of views for young people, so that they're not just holding on to one set of views. And I think that's where it needs to start. And exactly echoing what Zac said, it needs to, you know, be that slow burn, that slow process of building that trust with the young person, so that you're able to have that conversation with them.
Look, thank you. Alan, can I have another question, darling?
Do you mind if I quickly jump in there with something?
Yes, of
Julie? I'm
course,
sorry,
Bill.
just
Come in,
something
please.
very quickly. I just want to support people's enthusiasm and willingness for wanting to engage with their children and grandchildren on these issues, and just say they're teenagers, they're unfinished. What they think now and what they feel now is highly unlikely to be what they think and feel when they become adults. And so just a little bit of patience.
Yes, and there's hope in that as well. If I could just turn the mirror on myself for a while, I'm now a grandmother, spending a lot of time with a little girl who's just desperate to, she's only not even 3, but desperate for IT. And I realize I've got to just get off my phone. I've just got to do less myself. And I'm now monitoring my hours and trying to pull them down, because I'm Nana. I'm the role model a lot of the time. But Alan, another question. Thank you.
As a grandparent of 5 boys, my kids are very good with the boys, so I'm going to have to learn a lot of these things you just talked about, so they can impart all of the issues, get them there before they happen. One last one I think is quite serious, and that you talked, Melissa and Zalen, the group of people look up into the early 20s. So what are some of the telltale signs where that young man has actually not been able to get all the things we talked about in his teenage years? He's now getting into early 20s. There are suicidal thoughts. Are there any telltale signs in the people you've spoken with, and how do you get them to open up? Because up till then, they haven't come for help, have they? They haven't sought help, but they're a bit stuck. But maybe, you know, with this talk, I better have a chat to Zale and his team. They sound pretty good blokes. So how does the family sort of pick up those signs, if at all? Is it possible?
What I may do, if I may, is go to Zalen and then to Zac, because I know Zac's done a lot of work on this and it's such a sensitive and serious matter. Zalen, please.
I think for us in the work that we do, one of the clearest signs is disconnection. Change in behavior when they disconnect from things that prior to those feelings and those thoughts that they were actually extremely passionate about. So the clear sign is giving up on certain hopes and dreams, certain ambitions, certain goals that they've had for a long time, and throwing that away and actually having a genuine lack of care for oneself. So that the hygiene falls short of the mark, going outside falls short of the mark, wanting to connect with their friends, the relationships that they've spent years and years maintaining and keeping in a very important place for them. For us, it's usually the most clear sign that people are disconnecting and starting to battle with some suicidal thoughts.
And what do you try to do, Zalen?
What am I trying to do? Is
To
actually
help them. Yeah.
Well, it's actually let them know that it's okay to feel sad. That it's okay to, like, if you have a reason, like if there's something that's happened within your life that causes that type of feeling, that's normal. If you're crying and you're feeling depressed or sad because your mother just passed away, that makes sense to me. But please don't go through that on your own. Come here and let's talk about that. If not with me, if not with us, who's people that you can trust? And who's people that you know you can go and talk to, and they have your best interest at heart? Go and connect with them, if not us. Just don't go through it on your own. Now, if you don't have those impactful reasons and the why you're feeling sad or you're feeling extremely anxious, then go seek help from a professional. Always go and seek help from a professional. Some of the boys say to me, I say, who do you guys talk to? They say, oh, I got a really good friend, John. I said, how old's John? He said, oh, John's 13. And I said, John don't know much. And then they said, yeah, well, he hasn't been that helpful for me. And I go, well, do you actually know who you guys can go and talk to. Do you know about outside services? Have you spoken to mum? Have you spoken to dad? Do you know what's on offer for you? And do you know where the resources are? Have you spoken to anyone at school? And more often than not, our young people don't know. You know, you see the kids' helpline all the time pop up on TV, but for parents that are sitting here, tell me when the last time it was that your kid watched TV. You know, they're watching YouTube now, you know, they're watching Netflix. They're not watching TV. So these ads that are put up there for mental health and to battle these mental health situations, they're not on the platforms and the streaming services that they're actually on. And so being able to identify early on, okay, they don't have a why. Who do you know who you can talk to? Who are your support network? Who are your support people? And then always advocating them to seek help from a professional who's trained, that has the strategies, that has the time, that's done the work. That's always the best alternative option for us.
Thank you so much. Zach, can I come to you? The question obviously goes to people in their 20s, but your remarks to help us reduce suicide in Australia. Oh, you've turned yourself on, please.
That'll do it. I would love to hand over my PhD to Zaylin because I just don't need it anymore. What a bloody champion. Great answer, Zaylin. I think that change in behavior is fundamental when it comes to this stuff, and that is across the lifespan. Everyone, and we're all obviously here to talk about young boys, but fundamentally suicide is at its height in middle-aged and older men. So let's not forget about those statistics. Something that's really important when it comes to suicide, it is something that we are not willing as a society to talk about. It is something that within the household, if it is brought up, it is stuffed back down because it's frightening, it's overwhelming, and no one knows how to respond to it. That is something that I would recommend that all parents and grandparents after this go and reckon within themselves, because the amount of suicidality that is on the streets right now, that is in the homes of their loved ones, it's everywhere. And it is a part of human nature. And it is not something that requires a trigger-happy freak-out response, because that is the last thing that these young boys want. The core issue that we really need to be focusing on when we're talking about suicidality in men is the idea of burdensomeness, the idea of feeling as if they are a burden. Those thoughts are often what are at the core. It's that and disconnection, as Zaylin said, which are at the core of suicidality in young guys. And so if they come to you and they talk to you about these feelings, if you're so lucky to hear them, the response of you being overly worried and having no idea what's going on and increasing that idea that they are a burden on you and your family, that is not the answer. Patience, gentleness, empathy, compassion, connection, and really seeking out resources, whether it be from the likes of Movember or Orygen or otherwise, that is what is necessary. Understanding the commonality of these thoughts, talking through them in ways that are an understanding that this is a part of life, and there are ways that you are going to get through this and ways that we can support you. That's fundamental. And so I always say that looking at yourself in the mirror after this and saying those words, have you thought about harming yourself? Saying the word suicide, because it is so stigmatized that people just turn away from it, and they do not have the ability to necessarily bring it up in conversation. And the final thing I'll say, if you ask somebody if they are suicidal, it will not trigger suicidal thoughts. There is endless research about this that will not take place. Instead, if you bring it up, you open the space, you provide them the opportunity, you show them you are willing to listen, and as a result, you are there for them to support them through that time.
Melissa, a quick final comment, because our time is almost up, but thank you.
Yeah, and I just really wanted to add a practical component is that often when young men are feeling suicidal, they might open up to their friends, but really who has the qualifications of how to support someone in a crisis situation? Obviously, it's professionals, but there is suicide prevention training and mental health first aid training that anybody can access in Australia, and you might need to pay for it, but it gives you practical tools of what do you say in that moment if someone's in the moment of trying to hurt themselves, what can you do to keep them safe? And I really encourage anyone to go and access either it's called Assist or mental health first aid training.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone, I'll hand over in 1 second to Alan Schell to do a formal thank you to our panel. I just want to show you what sits on my desk here at home, which is my late father's belt. And it's not just here because this is on tonight, it's on my desk the whole time. Sadly, he's been gone a long time, but I just want to, I was lucky enough to have a good man, and he always wore the same belt his entire life, and now I have it on my desk. But it's just fantastic work, and I'll hand over to marvellous Dr. Alan Schell to close proceedings. Thank you.
I think Julie's marvellous, and I think we have an extraordinary panel here. Thank you to Zach, Neil, Zaylin and Melissa. It's been a great pleasure to have you here. And look, we didn't have a lot of questions because I think you answered the questions before they were asked, which is great. On my side, certainly in medicine, seen a lot of these things happen, and they come to the GP. They were lucky enough to see that I might give them good advice, and of course find the right professional for that person. It might not be the first time. They may need to go and see somebody that they get on with and they have the rapport with. So everybody out there, please, if you don't get right with the first one, then there's always a second and third who may just be the right person to talk to you, your son or family member. So I'd like to really say thank you to everybody for coming tonight, listening on Zoom, to know that there's a post-webinar email. If you can fill it in, we like to really hear from you and give us suggestions for the next time. It's been recorded. It will be available on the Wolper website. And finally, the next webinar will be, we've got a book for Wednesday, the 9th of November, and it's a very important part of the other half of this, the older men, male menopause. Is it fact or fiction? So I think that's another interesting evening. And as always, every year we sit down and in our committee and look at what sort of topics we should talk about next year. And we've had many, and we'll continue to have at least 5 next year. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to all of you who are attending tonight. We say thank you and good night.
Good night. We now formally end. Thank you very much, everybody, for being with us. Thank you.